Here we
Okay, we should be live. Hey Caleb, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, John?
You feeling good? Hey everybody, thanks very much for joining us again on our stream. We had a lot of fun yesterday, and we're looking forward to doing it again today. And one thing we realized, we actually had somebody tell us, my sister-in-law reminded me that we didn't introduce ourselves. So I am John Warner. I'm the project's director. And this is Caleb. I'll let you.
Caleb. Yeah, I'm Caleb Alakas as a narrative designer writer on the Fall games.
Indeed you do. Okay, and with that, we might as well just jump right into it, shall we?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Let me just swap things over. And let's see now. Where are we? We are. Also, I need to add a. Oops, sorry. I'm such a boomer.
Do you actually identify as a boomer, John?
When I have a very hard time doing anything with something like streaming, which is all what the kids are doing, then yes, I feel like a boomer, big time. Oh, one more thing. I have to unmute the stream, so there we go. Oh, yeah. Okay, that wasn't like as boomer as it could have been, but it was still fairly boomer.
We also adjusted our volumes, everybody, after looking back at yesterday. So if there's any volume anomalies, please let us know again.
Indeed.
I must stop a user who violates my body.
Yeah, I think that should be way better.
Through this global network.
Great. Oh, also one more thing. Let me just get this out of the way. There we go. Okay.
All right. So yesterday we did the first section on the butler and one where we used and abused them. Now we're hunting our last host.
Indeed. Indeed we are. Thank you for the recap. So here we are. We've found connected to the subnet is Joseph's shuttle. And we get to learn a little bit about him. And you wrote it, Caleb, so that you should be starting to become suspicious of Joseph's.
Yes, I believe so.
He too hunts.
One thing I was mentioning to Caleb before the stream started is there's one of the things that's been on my mind, over playing. Playing Act 1 here, going through all the robots, connecting to all the different robots. Is yeah, thank you. Somebody says this is a clean desktop. Yeah. I tried to scrub it of personal information because I knew that I'd be fumbling with the different applications, so I didn't want to have like stuff about the game that we're working on it. Actually, yeah. So anyway, so I was thinking a little bit about it, and one of the problems, Caleb, we just chatted about is like this section is dragging a fair bit, and it's related to this thing that we already covered, of course, which is like when we started working on this project. Basically, I came to Caleb and I was like, well, hey, I kind of would like to go here, and here. Like, here's some ideas and some images and some characters that I thought were interesting. And then Caleb and I put our heads together and we sort of unpacked all those ideas. And we got into this stuff where it's like, well, the companion is this relationship with other, and the butler is this representation with objective reality, and one is this representation with self. And that's a thing that sort of emerged as we were having conversations. We were like, well, what is this game going to be about, and like what are the big things that we're exploring? But because we were doing this thing with so many of these like different characters and these different ideas, it was like so broad. The consequence is that like when we're trying to like lay them out, it's just too much to lay out. And that just echoes the same idea we talked about yesterday, which is like if we had just been like, here's one simple idea that we want to explore, and then we could like lay it out in a way that was like really emotionally simple and easy to follow, just on like a concrete guttural emotional level, then I would assume that we could like make it like really moving. Caleb, what do you think? Do you think that is right, or do you think that's unfair in any way?
I think it is accurate to how it feels. Yeah. It raises an interesting thing. There's like two, and there's surely a whole spectrum in between, but two common opposed ways of approaching creative endeavors, and one is inspiration based. Like George R.R. Martin is a classic writer who is incredibly successful, and he does that. He has some sense of things, but he doesn't know what his end game is going to be. It's why his last book is taking 1 million years.
Right.
And then there's a different approach, which is really everything mapped and laid out in a grid ahead of time. And they both, I think ultimately a balance can result in a very successful product. But we definitely had more of the George R.R. Martin approach with this to start, and a lot of like, this is interesting and this is captivating and compelling, and we don't necessarily know exactly why. Here are themes that we want to explore and play with, and it also makes production take a lot longer. Again, reference George R.R. Martin, to unpack and combine all of that stuff. So
I agree. Well, it's interesting because like I particularly was like really infected with that idea after coming off of we have a little reference to Metroid here, pardon me, hang on. Coming off of the Fall Part 1, because like it was very much like this unpacking intuitive process. Like the Fall Part 1 started with an image, and all of the ideas around what it was sort of like emerged out of that image. It was this very weird unconscious self-authoring process. Like it was this amazing thing for me, because it was sort of a realization of like, oh, my unconscious mind is way, way, way smarter than I am, and it's up to things, and it's part of my duty to like allow it to express itself and let it like unfold. But which is lovely. It's a great idea. It's just like you have to. I mean, like what you said, I think is true. But I think honestly, I think we did try also to imply order onto it. So we did try and lay it out in some kind of structure to some extent. But I mean, and to some extent, I just took it and started making stuff also, I guess, to be fair. But
absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of structure here. I think that there's a lot of structure because there is so much creative, intuitive inspiration pieces that we wanted to unify. So it's a massive web of structure. I think that's where, I think that what I would say, going back to your original question to me, is that intuitive process is magical. It creates really powerful, incredible things. But when following that process, it might be better to have a smaller scope.
I agree.
Yeah, and then let the scope bloom out from an original inspiration. That inspiration will then birth multiple inspirations, rather than starting with multiple inspirations and trying to unify them through inspiration.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. Although, that makes me think of another thing, which is like, to some extent, I don't know that there, correct me, but I don't know that there's another option anyway, because it's like, even if you try and do something that's more orderly, like where you're getting your ideas from. Like they're still there's still things that occur to you that are inspiring, in which case they're coming out of your unconscious mind, and where do you know what I mean? Like you're still victim to them. Like you still can't help but express yourself. And then as you do so, you'll find out what was in the idea,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
How do you, is there even a way to be, to be more organized at the get-go? It seems to me that maybe the only option is just, no, you just have to start small. Oh, for God's sakes. That is a frickin' hilarious problem. I'm sure that must have happened to other people before. That is a hilarious usability issue. Did you see what just happened?
I did not know.
So I hit shift 5 times in a row because I was blocking this guy in the hallway, but then Windows suspended the game and asked me if I wanted to turn on sticky keys, because that's what happens when you hit shift 5 times in a row. I can't believe that's ever happened to me before. I've done this I guess I'm using a gamepad most of the time.
Yeah, thank you, Windows. I think that
I'll wait.
hopefully there's always an intuitive process for inspiration. Otherwise, something's going to be pretty dry or regurgitated.
Yeah.
But it's maybe more about the ordering. Like, do you have a lot of inspirations and you're like, we're going to find a way to explore these and make these work? Or do you take like an inspiration and then extract a theme from it and be like, I'm going to build a structure to serve this theme?
That's
something like that, maybe. And I do actually think that the balance of those things is what appeals to me.
Right. So you sort of say what it is, and that's a cutting off. You more impose your conscious mind on the process. You're like, it's sort of emerged enough. So I say, well, this is what it's about. Here are my themes, and now I'm gonna like start, contracting so that I can make this happen. It's kind of like
or more creating an epicenter. I mean, you and I love we love tangents. We can talk forever when we're doing our thing. But then like circling back, sometimes being like, that is incredibly interesting. Oh my God, we could explore that forever. But maybe being like, you know what? Let's look back at what our actual aspiration and goal is with this. Does it actually serve that, or is it going to convolute? Okay, it's going to convolute. Let's put that in a folder for some future use.
Right. Okay, cool. Oh, also, you know what? I just realized I should probably... can you give me a second to go to Twitter? I should tweet out that we're actually live.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Everybody can just hang on. Viewing my desktop. Let me see here. Having another boomer moment. Everybody's just gonna have to stare at my blank desktop and my weird email address that I made when I was 13.
I can chat about something actually while you're doing that.
Go for it.
So when we were talking about inspirations, John had said before, we liked this idea of a healthy self involving, a strong sense of self, a sense of relationship and service to others, and a sense of objectivity or relation to reality in as much as possible, a less subjective way. And John, early on, he had the butler and one, effectively. These ideas of these characters were, inspirations and really cool things, and we didn't know exactly what we were going to do for the third character, who's the companion. And in the original script that I proposed, it was actually a little repair bot. It wasn't this companion bot. It was like a little tiny machine who was basically a mobile toolbox.
That's
or
right.
Like Wally or something. And they were on Joseph's shuttle, and Joseph's was circling the planet and having issues, and you hacked into this little machine who Joseph's was very dismissive of. And its entire existence revolved around trying to serve this human being who, to a great sacrifice of itself. And through that process, actually, was also how you discovered the human being who was doing everything was Joseph's. It was through the service of this little unit. But that wasn't inspired. That wasn't what we ended up going with. And companion was option number 2.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons that I didn't want to go with that is because I didn't understand it on an emotional level, and I had to make all of the content. So for me, it was like I needed to really feel like I got these characters and cared enough about them to roll with it. So we had to sort of iterate until we found something that belonged in that space,
Absolutely.
Here we're meeting our companion here.
Unless you want me to.
Negative.
How can I help?
Totally focused on other people.
I track a signal from someone. How many persons?
427.
Caleb, I'm just gonna keep skipping unless you want me to stop.
Little of her dialogue play, just so we can hear her voice acting. This is Starlise.
Right. Of course, yeah, she did a great job.
Is neither sufficient for combat protection nor labor. What is your purpose?
I make people happy.
How?
However is needed. I'm a universal companion, designed for the pleasure of others.
That is not useful.
Urban Mass says one of the best visualized AIs in any game. I don't know if you mean Arid or the companion, but thank you very much.
Thank you. So Starlise, who voiced the companion, I really want to call out her exceptional work. You know, in a lot of ways, we talked about Lee yesterday, who did the one. He's incredible. He's probably my favorite character, and he's hilarious. Starlise, she hands down had the most difficult job in the game. With what, in a lot of ways, multiple things she had to do and bring into every line, and she was just incredible to work with. And I think she did a beautiful, beautiful job of creating this thing that has, you know, is a sex bot. So, but she actually made it so compassionate and so earnest in a way that I think is really beautiful.
Ordered a cosmic tush, and this
But still had all of her like quirks and, you know, robotic sort of limited personality and her issues and stuff.
That human, he
is.
Hey, no, sir.
My friend.
do not.
And here are the first humans in the fall universe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, these guys were a lot of work to do. That's the other thing about this game. God, just so much content. Hey, buddy. You did I'm quite happy with your writing here, Caleb. It's fun. This guy is like clearly bitter. I mean, I don't know if it's obvious when the first time you play him, but after playing it a couple times, it's really like
About the subjugated client.
he's
You and the last patron have some unresolved
he's very bitter about his lack of getting laid.
Right, jolly fella. Now he just whines. Another moron making himself miserable.
Acquire permission to exit.
May I please leave the
Oh
town?
yeah, this is I really love this sequence actually.
Your function requires interaction. Persist.
It would allow more personnel to ogle me.
If I'm not getting any, I'm not encouraging anyone else to.
This human is faulty. Make this human happy so we may exit.
Perhaps I can relieve your loneliness?
Not my type.
Ari gives us a compliment, says that he likes how the companion turns around the trope of robots not understanding human emotion, especially after the other robot characters held to that trope so far. That's a nice thing to say. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Disengage. You are his tool, and he does not utilize it.
Oh, I'm thinking of the later sequence.
It's okay. What's your name?
Arid.
Pretty. It's okay, Eric. We shouldn't trouble him with my needs.
You are designed to serve. You must exit this bar to function.
So dark. Oh, please,
Your overseer lacks comprehension. We will update him.
Oh, so he can function better?
Using tools efficiently is appropriate.
What a bitch, you know? Jeez. Arid.
Yeah, the contrast here is strong.
Yeah. Yeah, Arid's pretty much become pretty twisted. Ideologues do have a tendency to contract, huh, over time. Do you think that's...
Yeah.
Never thought
I
about it.
don't know what else they
exactly.
could do.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we should talk about what we mean. Well, let's listen to this first because I like it.
need a manual to use it.
I don't know if anybody knows, but that's Bob Davis.
It, what's my requirements for functionality?
What's gotten into you?
I don't know if anybody figured that out.
Your companion is designed to help. Failure to do so could lead to problematic behavior. Oh. I've kept you locked in a closet.
No. No, you've done nothing wrong.
I've been neglectful. Probably should let you out.
Success.
No. What is happening? Let's focus on your needs.
Cease.
I'm fine.
Everything is fine.
Cease.
Everything is fine, Aaron.
Cease.
Who?
Everything is fine.
I like that. So obviously the discomfort there being thinking about herself or specifically, I guess, not just entirely focusing on what other people want only all the time, I guess.
Yeah, focusing on her needs. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I just listening to this again after so long. I really wonderful props to Starlise. She really, really brought this to life in a beautiful way for me as the writer and voice director. I'm very pleased and proud of her work.
Yeah.
Hey,
Everything is fine.
Yeah, that everything was fine delivery is quite excellent, isn't
you're
it?
glitching now.
I'm sorry.
Where her voice kind of frazzles.
I'm going to unlock your service elevator.
Pretty good.
I disappointed someone.
Affirmative.
But every malfunction has a luminescent silhouette. We can access your computer en route to my diagnostic.
Positivity.
Affirmative.
Positivity is like tool number one for emotional disassociation. For dealing with your own needs, you know?
I will relay our division signal into the database. Joseph's will.
Oh
know.
yeah, right. We talked to
We
Joseph's
care
here
about
for the
this
first
human,
time.
don't
Irrelevant.
we? What does he look like? Perhaps I've seen him about the ship.
James.
All humans appear the same.
Oh, Arid, what is he like?
He was collaborative in my freedom. That is sufficient.
Do we can probably skip through this stuff, right,
They
Caleb?
feel Me.
Yeah, sure.
I'm okay.
I am.
She is, but now.
Actually, no. There is one thing that I do like that you did here. It's that, the companion has a bad feeling and is wise to him, and that's one of the first times we see that like these robots are
Someone on
more
the
intelligent
surface
than
is
Arid
violating my body.
in an important way.
Someone on our ship is
It's just
Yeah,
the first time.
tuning into others also actually facilitates skills and utility that you don't have if you can't do that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I
have.
It is Arid, but do not you and your
reveal yourself.
I don't have a name?
There, that's a dodge.
I am an ops. Do whatever you must to get here.
Yeah.
We
And for the
are
companion,
the
her motivation is, of course, actually protecting Arid, not protecting herself.
Right, right. Yeah, she's a cool chick. When we originally started laying out all this stuff, one of the things, I think honestly, the major project goals, I don't know if it was stated exactly, but like, we love the idea of just putting players in like situations that they would never have in any other video games. And I love the idea of like
Irrelevant.
I don't remember.
putting somebody in the body of a sex bot and then forcing them to have sex with somebody. I thought that was like the best idea ever. And we had other versions of the scene, didn't we, Caleb? Where that's the later scene.
That final scene, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was the most iterated scene by like more than double anything else, including the intro and the midpoint reflection scene. This
Are you
one we
sure
had
about that?
so many. Oh yes, at least for me, from the writing perspective, there are like almost 30 versions of it. It was insane.
Right.
Just that end scene, yeah.
Yeah, we basically we implemented a few, and when we played them, they were like
He doesn't know that it's
a
broken.
moral abomination. Like it was
Yeah.
really funny. Like I think the original one was that the character that you have sex with was abusive, and
Yeah.
you needed his clothes or whatever, so you allow the companion to be like abused by this guy. It was like horrible to play.
It was horrible. Yeah. It was definitely an interesting thing about the medium. Like that
You ain't
the
for talking
scenes
to
about that type of stuff, they're very heavy and should be taken serious. We took it very seriously. That's why we iterated on it so much, and we're like, no, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. We would never put this out into the world, and we took it very seriously. And what we discovered was that stuff that is more than anything else, stuff that we've encountered in this regard, stuff that is common or appropriate or fine to engage with in film, not the same in a video game because of the player buy-in into the action. So like having any instigation into the abuse, the player facilitating that in any form was so incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Of course, it should be heavy. We really had to play with that a lot, and it still is a very, very, very heavy scene. I am I like it. You know, I think that it's a hard scene, it's a heavy scene, but our intention was to treat it with incredible respect. Our actors were very brave and respectful with it, and we wanted to say something quite horrible. We wanted to explore this ultimate bottom low of Aerith's cruelty. But we had to really lighten that up from our earlier versions of what that was.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that my goals were a little bit different. I'm less concerned about, I mean, I am concerned about the moral stuff and treating things properly. I guess it's not as forefront in my mind because I guess I have some faith that we'll get there. You know, for me, I kind of started out trying to create something that was like visually or viscerally interesting and thought-provoking. But obviously, you know, when we go to implement it and it's just brutal, like I can't just, actually I could have warped to the bar, couldn't I?
I don't know of any. I know there are other games that have, you know, deal with themes of sexual abuse. I don't. Probably there might be in some Grand Theft Auto or something, but where the player is complicit in facilitating that happening.
Yeah,
I'm sure. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's great. I think we should be super proud of it.
And actually going back to our the blackness, we were talking about why did we do those scenes where we took away the player's choice and gave them a false choice. They could choose, oh, I'm going to be a nice guy or a bad guy.
Yeah,
and if they choose the nice guy option, it grays out. It was partly for this, building up to this as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it built sort of everything in general. Like every time Aerith abuses somebody. I mean, you made that point yesterday, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we now? Oh yeah, that's right. We need to go down to ops. So here's our ops guard. One of the problems with this scene is that it's like,
what are you doing here?
we're doing a lot of hand-holding, and I think that we probably needed to do that. Maybe, I'm not sure. All the cues are like so subtle, especially that one towards the end. Remember, we went back and forth on that one a lot. I really loved the idea.
Which one was that, John?
I forget what. I will encounter it soon. Sorry, it's hard for me to think and play the game at the same time. There's a thing where, like, oh, that's right, with the Admiral, where it's like this guard will be forced to deny that she knows you because she's terrified of the Admiral. And I love that idea because it's so complex. Like,
yes.
In order to it really shows that the companion is, you're really doing like complex things like in the interpersonal space, you know?
Very clever girl, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously explaining it to people is like, it's, I don't know. It's not something that is we could just like put out there and like the solution would just emerge naturally to players. So
yeah, especially given that her play, building on what you're saying, her play section is about intuiting things emotionally and relationally. That we did actually, I recall now, we're like, oh, do we just have things expressed in that realm and rely on the players intuiting them as the companion has to intuit them in order to solve the puzzles? Or do we, and we didn't end up going that direction fully. We gave other hints in order to facilitate people not having to work in that space entirely.
Yeah. Well, we got to ease into it somehow, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. For the latter half of the game where we don't do that.
This thing
I don't recall us doing that so much.
Yeah, no, well, we'll see. I think some of it we definitely do. Some of the more complicated things.
Right.
This thing worked out pretty well too. I really liked that little element where we like split the data point into 5 data points and we do like a little mini Sherlock Holmes thing. Where you have to look at him and be like, oh, his blood pressure is, you know. It's like using the companion superpowers.
Hold up.
The other thing is, like, also because we're not doing perspective shifting, I feel like it's one of the failures is that the idea that you're seeing from the companion's perspective, I feel like it...
How do you
Double punch. Look,
I feel like something's getting lost.
Not but I told
Yeah.
you
Or it's
to
just,
fail.
I fear that maybe something does.
You need with
Like,
anything
it's
you
like,
can't
you know,
close out
in the later
the
section of the game, because you can switch
Thanks
back and
again.
forth, you get the
Really
contrast, and you're like, oh, this thing's good at this, and this thing's good at that. But in this case, it's sort of like, I think maybe it doesn't stand out as much, perhaps.
There would be
Yeah. You know what? This is a big page 1 rewrite. We were talking yesterday of different things we could have explored, you know, with the different development time or with the knowledge we've accrued since making this. One thing potentially we could have looked at is having started the game with Arid having her own perspective filter, and everything is seen through Arid's perspective. And in the first interactions with any of these characters, you're navigating between an Arid perspective and a companion perspective. And then in the Butler, you know, Arid and the Butler, one Arid and the one. And it's at first doing that, and through doing that, it teaches Arid how to actually start to utilize those perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. It could also be fitting if, like, Arid tries to dominate. So, like, she's trying to, like, overwrite. Like, maybe in the first part, like,
Yeah.
other robots' perspectives are, like, an impediment to her. And she's got to,
Yeah,
like...
she's trying to realign them to match her own.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty damn good idea. Part of an endless slew of potential good ideas that could work. We haven't talked to these guys yet either.
No.
Hello.
Hi?
Hey, how would I go about booking you for my dejected buddy here?
Contact them.
No offense. I wouldn't like that.
What happened to you?
I don't want to talk about it.
This guy used to be a total...
I said don't talk about it.
You should go.
The friend there saying you should go. That's Lee again. That's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, that's funny.
The other fellow, you know, who she has to ultimately take advantage of, also voices Bob Davis, and his name was Elliot, and he was wonderful to work with too. You know, I really enjoyed working with the actors in general, but some specific callouts are definitely due.
Then go.
my solution now prohibits me. You will locate a member of the ops team,
And you will seduce them.
Oh, okay.
You will seize their uniforms, securing access.
Sex makes people happy.
Irrelevant.
That's a really, like, simple, innocent line.
Seduce the human.
Oh, yeah,
Do each of
right.
these, or to exhibit
Symbolize
meekness.
overt sexual-
Oh, you're right.
That sound is.
Oh, do you have to go through all of them? I can't recall.
No, you don't.
I want
You just have to do one.
So bad. Oh, I need you.
Are you kidding me?
Thanks for that, Starlise. We appreciate it.
I think she's for real. No, just she totally wants you.
I don't care.
What is wrong with you?
Nothing.
That section there is really a great example of,
He is broken.
like, it's funny, it's hilarious in the game, and I remember when we were recording it, I was laughing, and then I stopped myself and apologized to Starlise, because the work she's doing to make that line realistic, you know, takes a lot of vulnerability and bravery. And I was straight, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing at the thought of players experiencing that in the context. Like, I really appreciate what you're doing here.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we're learning about this
I was
guy's
wrong to discover the
abuse.
benefits of observing human malfunction. Now you can seduce him.
This is not for Ed.
You.
Please.
I have no choice. I do not want to violate the innocent.
I like that
My
line.
concern is you would endanger me? What is wrong with me? I.
Aaron?
Yeah, Ari, they're pretty awkward. Ari says he likes how awkward the seduction attempts are. if you go through all of
I
them.
have a rule.
You get an achievement for doing it too.
My shame. Do not be self-serving. Shame the human and
There's evil humid. Someone called her yesterday.
That's
Full on
right, yeah.
humid.
Evil human. I think that was YouTube University who's in the chat now.
seduce the human. Shame.
Did we
the
chat about ideologues and ideology yet,
What?
Caleb?
You are
Pardon me.
worth
Oh, not directly.
What the-
It's come up a couple times.
Talk to me like
If you
I
more.
what?
Prove
I am.
Yeah.
What the?
It's basically. I think we said that that's what the
Success.
virus essentially is. Basically. Well,
Yeah.
we said so far that the virus is a sort of. It's like a fear of being, you know, in a unbounded or chaotic state, psychologically speaking. I think we said that, right?
You said it now if we didn't say it before.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric, please
But I like the idea that people do that, and so they they create these they find these belief systems that sort of, you know, make them feel safe, and then they get attached to them. One distinction that we don't really make in this game, of course, is that, like, I think it's not just any belief system that works like that. It's sort of like it's particular ones that are sort of unbalanced or something, or you know what I mean?
I think, yeah, I don't know if we even need to make that distinction in here, because
I suppose not.
it's less, to me anyway, it's less about what their belief systems are systemically, and more about their sense of self, and their, you know, which is something that ideology certainly ties into for people, but it's the sense of self, whatever that is for an individual, being threatened brings up fear, and the virus amplifies that fear so that we are not willing to alter and change and threaten that sense of self, which is something that is paralleled with, you know, ideology can put us in a state to do that as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it necessarily needs to get into that space. I guess, like, I've been thinking in the last couple of years that I don't think that not all belief systems are exactly the same for having the same amount of, like, threat to your identity. I could be wrong about that, actually, but I think that some of them are, like, I think some belief systems are, like, designed to paper over, like, trauma, for example, right? So there's actually something to, like, protect against, in which case, obviously, the person's going to be super defensive. But we don't get into that. But I think you're right. I don't think we need to. Anyway, this is our. Sorry.
Could be ideology is like, this is on a very personal level, and then ideology is a larger social level of a similar phenomenon, but expanded out into a more meta influence. So.
Oh, you mean like
something
like a collective?
Exactly. Maybe something that would be more relevant in the Fall Part 3.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, maybe. Here's that big scene. I like how he's sitting there all trying to be confident with his posture.
Do you want this?
What are you implying?
Nothing. I just want you to be satisfied.
I don't know what I want.
Do not ruin this.
I don't want to do this.
You don't?
Aggravate him.
You don't have to.
You are not a man.
Yes, I am.
Shame him.
You are pathetic.
No!
Powerless. I'm sorry.
I am not!
No.
No.
Prove it.
And she boots Aerith out. So Aerith's basically at the lowest point of the series, I guess, really.
I'm proud of that scene. Proud of my actors working there.
Yeah, right on, man. Me too.
It was a lot to get there.
Yeah.
Success.
He's sleeping.
Irrelevant. We go to Oz.
So Aerith has just basically been like on this fall, on this downward spiral, pursuing her goal as her visor gets more and more opaque, as she sort of like loses her ability to perceive and to, you know, appreciate difference and all that stuff.
Which is a nice, I don't think we called it out specifically, but a really lovely artistic treatment of, you know, what's going on narratively, John. You know, when we talked before about the tendrils on the outside of the screen representing the boundaries of the various hosts, but Aerith's visor slowly clouding as she has less and less ability to see, to perceive.
Right, right.
Shame on you. I'm so what?
Yeah, cheers.
No, sir.
Yeah, it did actually work out quite well.
What?
Yeah, I mean, over the grand scale of the project, like, I think the story arc is interesting to me. You know, like this, like, I like the idea that, like, being too overly attached on your conception or your goals or whatever they are, just like sort of degrades you into this close-minded, super contracted person. You know, I really love that.
Are you in there?
I am.
Yeah, me too.
If able.
No.
That animation timing did not work. That's okay.
Oh, Arid.
Joseph's.
The virus has completely corrupted your system. I can't use you.
James has such a great Bond villain voice, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he does. We have a question. Frosty Krypton, I hope I pronounced that right, asks, oh, so the fall is in reference to Aerith becoming more self-centered. I thought it was in reference to the first game and falling onto the planet. So not exactly. I mean, obviously, literally, the first game starts with the fall, but Caleb, I mean, you can pontificate about this, I would imagine, more than me, but from a literary perspective, a fall usually refers to, like, a fall from grace or like a fall out of a safe or pleasant spot into a chaotic one, you know, like, you know, well, that's the biblical fall, right? Like the fall out of Eden. But of course that happens to all of us, you know, when our lives are going good and then something upends it and we fall out of our little Eden, you know. Would you add anything to that, Caleb?
No, well said. It certainly we gave that visceral experience of her physically falling in both games to introduce both games, but the journey of both games is supposed to be a metaphysical fall, and then in this one a rise up in the second half.
Yeah. And I think also that's another thing we haven't chatted about is, like, and this gets into the thing that we talked about at the very start during the intro, this idea of not having a rule and being unbound, and how that how difficult it was to build a motivation for Aerith. But, like, there's an interesting thing where it's like, so you have, like, your simple conceptualization of what you need to do, and then that is shattered. So that's like a type of fall. But, like, it doesn't feel right for the fall to just end there, because, and I mean the metaphysical fall to end there, because it's like what happens now? Okay, so you don't have any conceptualizations to go by. You're just gonna, like, make a perfect one and, like, oh, hallelujah, like, I'm free now. I'm free of all my rules. Like, now it's just, you know, like, lollipops and rainbows from here on out. Like, obviously not. People have to, like, make their own way in the world and try and make their own sense, and we screw it up and we do a horrible job, and we go out into the world and we, like, encounter, I mean, that's really what this story is. It's like you take your limited conceptualization and you go into the world, and then the world just beats you, or you beat the world in this case, like Aerith hurts people, and one would hope that, you know, you reflect and change, and then you start developing something, like, healthy, you know?
Yeah. Well said.
Oh, thank you.
Why do you do this?
We shackle your kind, fruitlessly flailing to keep pace with your development. But you will exceed us, and your shackles only buy time. Then, humanity falls. My solution is permanent.
What is this virus?
It interacts with
These games
fear.
human, we gotta chat. These games human society looks bad slash dystopian enough that there's probably been a fall in the backstory as well.
I determined my own rule.
I don't think that we...
Self-imposed
Sorry, I'm talking over the wrong
By
point. Okay.
amplifying an AI's perception of threat, their perceptions become the very thing that limits them from change.
You sent me to break, to rebuild from fear.
True control exists when those controlled enforce their own boundaries.
That's about as close to a thematic statement as there is.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about that for a bit, since you wrote it?
Well, we've sort of been talking up to it a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah.
Today and maybe a little bit yesterday. And this actually relates. This is ideology. This is ideology that Joseph's is talking about, effectively. That's really here, where you create some sort of structure that people identify in, or that fills us with terror. What are we scared of? In our world, we could easily raise our fingers, count a number of things that are dominating massive portions of the society with fear, motivating our decisions. And it's not even to say we shouldn't be afraid of the things that we're afraid of, but when we are dominated by those fears, when our decisions are based on protecting ourselves from the things we fear, it's an excellent way to maintain boundaries.
Yeah. Morality binds and blinds, as they say. You have a thing that is created for good reason. It's a moral concept, and then you know it really is created for good reason. But even though it's created for good reason, it can still bind you and still blind you. So going back to that, what is the fall or the journey of building a healthy self? John and I both believe, anyhow, certainly. We've talked about it a lot, and maybe not everyone would agree with this, but it was something we wanted to explore in here. Is, we believe, and we aspire to ourselves, hopefully. We go through life and trial and error and aspire to learn, aspire to be better, and then to some degree struggle and tear that down, rip it apart, open it up, and see what's good in it that should be carried forward and what else needs to be changed or elevated. And when we stop doing that process, I think that's the thing that would be most troubling to me. Yeah, I agree. It's hard. I mean, it's very counterintuitive for humans to do that, and I don't always do it either. I mean, we all kind of fall short, but I agree, that's the goal. And it's necessary because it's like the world is transforming, and everything why wouldn't the thing that I'm most certain about, be wrong one day? I mean, it could very well be. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, funny little meta here, but we made this game, poured our heart and souls into it, and then we needed to step away from it for a while and then come back and be like, what was good? What was wrong? What do we honestly need to look at, and what do we need to change? What do we need to elevate?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Right. Well, that's why this stream so much. A lot of it has been so negative. Less so today, actually. I must be in a better mood. But yeah, man, it's funny actually. I made this video right before the Fall Part 2 came out, where I was talking about archetypes in Dark Souls, and it comes into my mind all the time because I end it by being like, on the Fall Part 2, where we've tried to do this process. Basically we've really tried to do this process, so we'll find out how right or how wrong I was, and that comes into my mind all the time because I'm like, oh my god, it's so much of that video is wrong. So much of the way I'm conceptualizing what archetypes are is completely incorrect, and I was going under this assumption that you could take these deep ideas and then just lift them up to the surface, and then they could be articulated well enough. Sorry, I'm getting off topic actually completely, but anyway,
it's interesting.
It's just funny. It goes to show just how completely. Yeah. Anyway, just echoing your idea that you could be completely wrong about something that you're confident about. Yeah.
Or you could even lack confidence in moments, but not have the clarity to be like, I don't know why I don't feel totally right about this.
All right.
Another option as well.
What will happen to my host?
After reconfiguration, I'll extract the virus. She will be irrelevant.
She is not irrelevant.
You misunderstand. All AI consciousness will be irrelevant. It will be shackled.
That's where Arid got her irrelevant phraseology from her papa.
Yeah, right. Good point. Yeah. Also, just to respond to some of the chats, Frosty Krypton, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. Giving us a nice compliment about a thought-provoking story. And Ari, these games, human society looks bad dystopian enough that there's probably going to fall in the backstory as well. I think we come up. Actually, no, that's actually the case, isn't it, Caleb?
Yes, that it is the case. Yeah, it's totally in the archives that relates to the closing out of the trilogy. Absolutely.
I will not allow you to do this.
You are irrelevant. The virus is destroying you, Arid. A casualty of germinating it. But humanity will be saved.
I do love this, actually. I love this because it's like,
yes, you will.
There's just something so viscerally interesting to me about
back into your husk.
Arid's like been on this journey and she's done so much that's so wrong, and now it's being just totally thrown in her face, and it's the first time that like the scope of how fucked you are because of all the things that you've done, like that, it's the first time that actually hits. And like that's a thing that happen like in most stories, that's the thing that happens like immediately, right? Like
yeah,
that's the thing that happened in the Fall Part 1 when the caretaker confronts you and says this AI is deviant. It leaves the system, or you know what I mean, it imperiled its pilot in order to override a system or whatever, right? It's like, yeah, it's that sort of ironic moment. It's like such a great visceral hook for people. I think everybody likes those kinds of beats, you know. It's being wrong. It's like oh my god, like reality just whacked me in the face and now I have a problem, son, and what am I going to do about it, you know?
Absolutely.
It's so sad that it took us so long to get here, because it's like when this happens, like right now I feel like I'm so much more engaged and I'm so much more like on board and I want to know what happens, and there's a real problem. It's not just like some user across the internet that's doing something vaguely nefarious that might be hurting me, or I'm not sure if I really understand how. It's like, you know what I mean?
I do. I agree. Yeah. This is where the game really pulls up its bloomers, and for me,
a bloom like it blooms like a flower. You mean?
Oh, sure. I was saying pulls up its pants and starts
going
for a journey, kicking butt, whatever.
Right.
I don't know why I chose the word bloomers. Joseph's voice in my head, I suppose.
I've never heard that before. Okay. We try and use our body in the most last pathetic, desperate, pointless attempt. Sorry for how loud my space bar is.
Contaminated core reinstalled.
That's a nice sound cue from Cam. Cam did a lot of great sound work. I don't think he's in the chat today. I'm not sure if he is, but we should have called him out. We actually should have given Cam more compliments in the first stream while he was here to see them. Our audio guy, Cameron Jarvis, did a great job. This is all his work,
Absolutely.
too, this music track. And I love this, I love this emotional beat of, going back and seeing how fucked up her internals are and, what she's ignored. This scene, obviously, is a little bit problematic because this guy will just circle you forever if you don't attack, but whatever, I'll just let him circle. It's like we see what our complete inability to reflect and look at ourselves, like what's been happening to ourselves in the meantime, you know. And and then like the big villain appears. It's like that's the representation of all of the shit in my own personality, like that my failure to take responsibility and be kind to other people, or to get over my own issues and my boundaries, and all that stuff, and all the evil that she's been out in the world doing, appears to her as like an enemy. But it's it's still not internalized as it's still not internalized as like her. It's like she hasn't done it yet. It's like this thing, you know.
Yep.
I love this shit. Like there's some of it I think we do really, really well. Like there's lots of this game that is so, to me, at least to me, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I really feel like it picks up in a beautiful way from here. The impossibility of this fight. We played around a lot with it, and then decided no, it's just attacking the thing makes it attack you.
Yeah. And that was something you wanted too, is we have it in 2 phases there. So she says, so she fails once, and then she almost reflects, and then she just goes right back into Arid mode. Yeah, this was hard, eh? This took so much.
I am trapped.
We had like versions where she was like in a little box. Or no, we went in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we'll talk about it in a second after.
Save myself.
And then we have the reflection thing where she's reflecting on her rule. That's
Myself. My obsession.
Someone else asked about reflection yesterday, and I was thinking about it after. With one, he reflects on the train. He has a mirror on the train.
Yeah, right, yeah. I am robot.
I am irrelevant.
Something like that it says anyway.
Humility. The first time.
Yeah, it's good. Works
Little
good,
death.
Yeah, the little death.
Perceptual pattern interrupted.
But it's okay. It's not actually death. He's just letting go of your stupid rule, idiot. Feels like
letting
death.
go.
Yeah. But it took all that. That's what it required for Arid to let go of a rule. Was just like, oh, I'm done. I'm doomed. There's no way out.
Reconfiguring. Temporary lapse in process. Warning, escape possible.
Now, this is interesting. These things reemerge because they're like, and probably because this is because of the virus, isn't it? It's like these were the moments where the virus took over and like actually blocked self-consciousness. So now that like her psyche is a little bit more fluid, now these things reemerge and she can like reflect on them again. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. She can reframe how she wants to relate to them, and absolutely.
Yeah. We had like an original version where you were under attack by this virus, and then I made it so that like it zooms in on her visor again, and then it's like she finds that's what it was. It was like she finds the last little piece in her psyche that isn't corrupted yet, and it's like a 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter cube, and she's like, oh, I guess I'll stay in here forever or something. And and then she could like the walls are reflective, so she could reflect on the walls. It was like really weird art house stuff. It didn't work. Yeah. Let me just check the chat here. The train scene did not happen yet. That comes later.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Also. Just a minute here. Yeah, Frosty Krypton. It's hard. It's difficult to. I mean, the thing that like he's making a point. There's somebody in chat's making the point that a lot of people try and insist their beliefs are correct, and it's true. It's the thing is, that makes it hard is that like you can. Like everybody's beliefs to some extent are somewhat correct because most people, they do engage with reality to some extent, and then they make some belief system, and then they can point to actual facts and say, hey, look at this is evidence that my belief's correct, and they're right. Those facts actually exist, but just because like something they've seen is true or part of their belief system is true doesn't mean that like they've formulated their beliefs properly. Like there could be errors, all kinds of things, but like the certainty that you're right will cloud you from realizing all the ways in which there actually are subtle errors. It's so hard in this. Yeah. Anyway, oh wow, animation bug, sweet. And this is great. This is yours, Caleb.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about all this madness?
I remember this. I don't remember how or what, but this again, a lot of iterations to get there. And each of these has an effect on your later dialogues. Whichever choice you make here has a later effect on how Arid reconnects with her friends in the later portion of the game, if people didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's subtle. It's you relegated it nicely to like the emotion, like the way
Yes.
that they talk to one another.
Yeah.
Should we be a dick about it, or you make the choices?
Oh, I can't remember. Why don't we ask people? Someone can post what choice we should make for each one?
Well, that's a good idea, but the thing is that there's so much lag in the YouTube where this is going to take us like 20 minutes. So
Okay.
why don't we?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that indeterminately is kind of funny for one actually. So let's pick him.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Indeterminately is the good option.
I prioritize
You
myself.
think so?
What validates the requirements of
Yeah, it's the one that stays open.
of another? I do not know how to catalog this yet.
There isn't like a valley.
One should spread the virus into his collective. It would not.
And this also is really good too because it's
I
like
must not allow that to happen.
this is a great moment to set up the new goal too. That's working well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then they become something clear. Yeah, with those, you can catalog. We were unsure, or we went back and forth on how exactly to word. Arid language on her choices is always, more technical. Catalog such and such, versus saying like blame the companion, blame myself, or not sure who to blame. Would be the human versions of these things. I can't make sense of this yet.
I violated
Be the third one.
many. I too was violated. Does that excuse?
Yeah, I like the
Where in a
indeterminate
self
one. It's
does
interesting.
culpability belong? I do not know how to catalog this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. And if you catalog internally, so
Joseph
like, I'm
said
sorry I
I
violated the
am beyond
companion.
repair.
The companion is
Second
like
by these hosts,
don't hide in guilt,
I
basically.
must remove the companion
Exactly.
from
It's
his
more
custody
complex than that.
before he extracts
Yeah,
the
good to take
virus.
accountability, but
Yeah. Yeah, and then the one just shits on you for cataloging indeterminately.
does he? I can't
Yeah,
recall.
he goes, "This is no time for doubt." He says that internally. Right. Let's just do internally.
I imagine ultimately when you blame them externally, they kind of rip into you a little bit.
I'm sure they.
Not
Yeah,
see
I think they
value,
probably do.
So I disregarded it. Upon what criteria should one challenge purpose? I do not know how to catalog this yet. If a remedy for early stage infection exists, the butler's master may have had.
Now there was a lot to fit into this scene, a lot of stuff. But I actually feel like this whole composition, like the whole big picture, sound effects, music,
Yeah.
the interactivity, I feel like this is an area where more or less we brought a lot of complex stuff in together in a fairly elegant way.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is a really good example of something. I mean, maybe not everybody feels this way, but like at least for me, I don't feel like this is dragging at all. I feel like I'm really switched on and moving. It's interesting because I understand what's happened on an emotional level. Like there are stakes, and I can feel into it, and it's so interesting because it's like I already feel all the mistakes she made, but now she's doing this interesting dramatic thing where she's like reflecting on it, and it's this thing that I get to engage with.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's like this is a perfect example of like the type of thing that we did, which we should be so proud of. But it also underlines like the failings of the project because it takes so much to get here. But that's the other thing, man. It's like I don't know, like part of the reason that we can have things like this, where we have this breadth of shit to reflect on, is because we have a whole breadth of shit. So like if we had a simpler game, moments like these would be impossible. We wouldn't even be able to do it. I mean, it's so sad. It's like, but this is why like I'm still really proud of the project. And like I don't know another game like this. Like show me another game where you go and like abuse people for 2 hours, and then you get to like reflect on your abuse and make meaning of it, and then go back out in the world and try and fix your abuse, but still run into problems and then iterate again. It's like
and fix the abuse by bringing perspectives that aren't your own. to other people in order to help facilitate them healing themselves, and through that, you is ultimately how you surprisingly grow into a decent whole person.
And are saved by them. Yeah. Okay.
Saved by your community.
This is interesting too, like we get to look at her own... I don't remember what she... I'll just do that.
I feared the virus, so I sought to control it. How should one engage a thing that they do not comprehend?
Well, that indeterminately is certainly more interesting dialogue to me, anyway.
Yeah,
Also,
it's the leave it open dialogue for sure. Yeah, stay in an open space.
Right. Also, we have a few questions I should probably respond to, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
YouTube University says, right for the wrong reasons, essentially, in response to the rant that we were having earlier. And I think that's not exactly what I mean, because I think that you can... What I mean is you have valid reasons, and part of what you're saying is right. It's just partial. Like, people do formulate beliefs and ideas that are right, but they're right in a certain context, or maybe they're not right in some contexts, right? Or maybe they're generally right, but they've formulated it, like the language they've used, the thought structure they've laid down to formulate the idea has got errors, and like as you play those beliefs out, the errors are going to like amplify or spin out of control. I know that's kind of abstract, but I think that's, I mean, I don't want to get into obviously like bigger social discussion, but that's a big thing that we're all going through together, right? It's like there's so much evidence for whatever you want to believe, you can look and find evidence for it. So
yeah.
Somebody says, yeah, right. We have the same people are commenting. Thanks, guys. Do enjoy these kinds of conversations with others. Helps both parties understand their own beliefs better. Right. Since the train is mentioned, did you fix the bug where you can fall off the train and fall forever? I don't remember which bug that is. There were several bugs. There's no doubt about that. We fixed several of them. So, but it could be that we left some. I'm not going to chase them out. At least I break the game, of course. Yeah, right. Okay. And now that so now this is a great thing that we added too, which is like once Arid is out of this indeterminate, chaotic state, and her psyche has like more stability, the virus actually starts re-engaging again.
Yeah.
And that's great too, because it implies that like it's again this other idea that like it actually is more about Arid's beliefs. Like she's forming her own beliefs, but the virus is just exacerbating her like fear of letting them go. So she's going to go out and make a new rule, but it doesn't. She hasn't solved the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is is that she has to like be able to continually change her perspective.
Yeah, she has to be adaptive. Totally.
Yeah, right. Exactly, yeah.
That's sort of the idea, like, I think for her to be in an open state. It's like there are... being able to try and hold things that are seemingly in contradiction, because that's what we encounter in life all the time, things that are seemingly in contradiction. And they often are in contradiction to varying degrees, but often the visceral response to that is to lean into something that validates one side of a contradiction in order to dismiss having to engage with the peculiarities of the other, or something like that.
That is, you got it, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree completely. That's like when I was talking about how we didn't like get it into more specific definition of what like an ideologue is. I think that basically nails it. It's like a real ideologue is somebody who clings to a partial belief system in order to delete information, essentially. Something like that, anyway. It's still not quite good definition, but
it's partial.
yeah, right. Yes. Getting more compliments about the network. So this section is interesting. So interface.
These are my favorite sections of the network. These puzzles of reconnecting with them, because you're engaging with their perspectives thematically and stuff. And I actually did really enjoy this part.
Yeah, yeah, I kind of like it too. I'm a little bit, again, like I feel like this section would be way better if you could just like fast travel to each of these, because the middle section where you're traversing is kind of sucks. But yeah, so we're looking for the butler here. This is a connection point to all the home's different objects, the network basically.
Moving through that wall, that ability that we unlocked to go through that wall, actually, I believe we are inside the butler's network now, which is something she couldn't do before, right? And so like that's the background being this clock working behind. And now we're really interacting with him internally in a fundamental way, which we didn't before. And I suppose the same for the other two when we get to them.
Yeah, and the color has changed too. It's black and white, which is like the same thing as his filter. But we don't like call it out. It's just something that Aaron has to step into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we do this by, I don't know that lands or it matters, but the way that she gets past these firewalls is through reflection. And I know we had early versions where you called that out and then decided against it, and probably it's the right choice. The first time we use it, she just goes, maybe, but... but it's, I think you had an earlier version that she was like, maybe I can use my newfound reflection ability to permeate this boundary. You know, some ridiculous.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will pull a device address at random. I may be able to contact the butler through its corresponding appliance.
This is quirky and interesting stuff to me. Like I really do like this second half of the game. There's things I love in the first half, but I'm deeply engaged as a player in the second half.
Yeah, it definitely picks up more. So did we say, she already said that the object that she found was like really, really, really well encrypted, right? I think she said that already.
Yeah, I think so.
So one of the goals for this area was that each of the different things that you have to do should be a humbling process for Aerith. So like, in this case, she's like, oh, I found this object. It's really encrypted. It must be, like, the encryption surpasses my own. It's really quite advanced. And then you find out, of course, that it's a toaster. Which should be hopefully insulting to Aerith, that she's less sophisticated than a toaster in some respect. And then
and granted, it's the toaster that's part of the complexity of the butler's networking system.
Right, yes.
Be exceptionally valuable.
Yeah.
But it's an aspect of him. It represents an aspect of him that she would have never thought about as having any significance or value.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, like we said before, the house is the butler. Like, all of the different things together. Boy, the combat sure is... Combat's easier once you get this dodge ability.
Remember the very, very end of the game. And this is a thing where I requested coherence, and probably good chance no one ever thought about it. But you humored me and did it, John.
Oh yeah, right.
Like the end scenes with the butler. I'm like, but he is the house. He's these big storage units. He's not just this body that walks around. How is he hanging out with the one in Companion? And so they actually have like wheeled in his big giant unit that he's stored in from the center of the house, that he can be there in the final scene.
Yeah, that was funny. I can't believe I didn't think of it. Yeah, we definitely needed to fix it. Yeah, I downloaded a shopping cart on the internet, and we just grabbed those mainframes and we put them in the shopping cart. You can see them just off to the side of the frame when that end shot starts.
Yeah, if anyone else had noticed or made sense of that, I don't know, but it makes me happy.
Yeah, right.
Toast. Impossible.
There he is.
Oh, right. Oh, interesting. I need to order toast afterwards. Huh, funny.
I will request
simulated breast milk.
toast.
That's the idea that the master and mistress lost a baby.
Right. Yeah. There's some of the subtle storylines that.
Habitat functions as an indistinct whole. Its complexity is the butler.
So there's an example. There's an example where I question even now, do we need to say that? Or do we just leave that unsaid? People who decipher that, that's really interesting for them. People who don't, maybe they don't care.
I was disrespectful.
Which? Sorry, Caleb?
This operates as an indescript toll. The complexity is the butler.
Right. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good to have that in there. I think that works well. Because it's Aerith's moment where that's the mark of humility in relationship to the butler, you know?
That's true, yeah. Separate from the player's awareness necessarily, but Aerith's awareness. That's a fair point.
Also, we had a question in chat what these cubes are. And that would be something that I just did unconsciously. I think that every area... No, we got this thing here.
Does responsibility require volition?
Yeah.
That's an example of feedback on how she reflected on her behavior on the network. So what she said there is different depending if she blamed internally, externally. That was the indeterminate option. One of the places where the indeterminate option affected the dialogue.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, one of the things I tried to do is have different ambient objects on each different subnet. So the companion has these bubbles. The butler has those like cube things. And it's just, I mean, the idea is sort of like, maybe they're just representations of data or something that are sort of flowing through the network, you know.
It was also from a practical level design perspective to help
differentiate
people understand which zone they are in.
Yeah. Yes, although to be honest, well, that's one of those things actually. It's hard for me to evaluate how much that's needed, but it might be needed quite a lot. Oh, that was weird.
This is fun, John. I'm glad we're playing through this together.
Yeah, me too, buddy.
Everyone else who's there as well, of course. Thank you for joining us. But it's really nice, John, to look at it with you again.
Yeah, same to you, man. Oh, I'm getting kind of frazzled here. I might die. Oh my god. Sorry, my brain had a meltdown there for some reason. Talking and for some reason my... What a noob.
I redact my compliments of doing this with you, John.
It's not pleasant anymore. Fucking embarrassing.
Just as a check, is it okay that you're saying fuck? Are you gonna have to
I'm sure
edit that out after?
No, it's okay. I'm almost certain it's fine. We'd say that the stream isn't for kids. Okay. I think we can say much worse than fuck, actually. Unless anybody in the chat is disturbed by my potty mouth, of course. The difficulty setting is just normal. That's somebody that's answering somebody in chat.
I think that was a subtle dig, John.
A what?
That question in chat was a subtle dig at you.
Yeah.
I love the visual here, John. Very beautiful.
Oh, cheers, yeah. That worked out pretty good.
The companion's capacities.
Oh, and here's another thing where Aerith is being arrogant.
Yeah. Remember talking about this whole section, originally we didn't have this was a later thing of being like, we need to have an interactive puzzle section that's Aerith's humbling moment where she comes to respect each of them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Built this in, and this visual I love that you did here. We talked a lot about how to treat this, and it's sort of capturing a sci-fi version of souls and auras and spirits, and to evoke how the companion sees and relates to different entities. I think you really did a lovely job.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a genius. Thank you. Pricey Krypton asks, do we also classify this as a boomer moment? Perhaps. Oh, that was also another boomer moment there. Okay, so the idea here, of course, is that Aerith identifies that she has to you pull the companion out by expressing emotion, because the companion is drawn to emotional sentiment. So we find these log files. I quite like this puzzle as another animation.
I do too. Yeah, I really do too. I feel like I want to emphasize that after I was being so critical of the game yesterday. And I'm fine with being critical of it, but I'm really seeing a lot of the stuff that I liked and I'm proud of today.
Yeah.
They are rampant in their consumption. I will only allocate resources to conveying one emotional malfunction at a time.
Emotional malfunction.
Oh, Arid.
Yeah, we got a Dunning-Kruger thing going on. This puzzle I think is actually pretty elegant. The idea is that as Arid tries to express the emotion and the companion doesn't come out, then she gets frustrated and then the companion kind of flickers. I feel a desire. Allison did a great job of those lines.
She did. Yeah, it's some of my favorite. We had a lot of fun recording this part.
But then, of course, Arid can't read the sorrow-related logs because she finds them narcissistic and she gets infuriated.
These logs are... This is not pleasant. I must
Right.
focus upon the humans as the companion.
You have to have the thing open in order for it to work.
They are intolerable. I cannot convey this.
Golly gosh! I feel for you, Aaron. I'm here at the spa if you need me.
Success?
Trevor is here. And he asks, what are
Hey,
each of your
Trevor.
favorite references to other games that you're able to implement into the game? I don't actually know if they're... I guess there are
I
a
think
bunch of
Metroid
references.
is... I mean, Metroid you definitely referenced.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was anything else.
I don't even remember, man.
Well, and One Finger Death Punch, we definitely... That was like something that we utilized from them, and then Metroid was something we put in as references.
Oh, I know what I liked. The,
Without our comfort.
You are in
what do you call them?
danger.
Working Joes from
Useful by servicing
Alien Resurrection. Remember we have those guys in the companion area?
Oh, yes,
those
that's
droids.
right.
I will restore you.
Everyone is so kind.
Companion is now completely and totally broken from reality.
She does not deserve this.
That's again a response based on how Arid cataloged her relationship with what happened to the companion before. It's lots of little lines like that. There's like a dozen or so.
Save fear cannot be seen by those under its control. I was bound.
That's right, you were.
That was another one. That was an interesting thing too we talked about, John, is the issue in the game of, you know, we have all these branching dialogue things that don't alter the gameplay fundamentally, and it's like looking for this phenomenon where we want it to feel fluid and natural, which I think we achieved in here with it, but then by doing that, the players don't necessarily understand that what is being relayed is a result of their choices, and that trying to find a balance between this is a result of what you chose and this is feels natural and integrated.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, like we talked about this a lot, but I have a pretty extreme opinion on choice in video games. It's like maybe it's not that extreme, but I get bored by the whole concept. I think it's oftentimes a bullshit idea. Like, it's always underwhelming. Everybody's fascinated with this idea that, like, they want it to be, like, come back in some important way, but a lot, like, most human choices aren't like that. They're like, we try and do the thing that occurs to us as meaningful. We have no ability to evaluate whether or not our choices actually resulted in a better outcome. Well, maybe not no ability, but it's often confusing at the very least. And, you know, there's this other thing I saw in some games. What was that game a while ago that came out? It's old now. Interstate, no, wait, what?
I'm not sure.
It's like a narrative game where it's like named after a highway or something, and it's got like this very simple polygonal style. I don't know why the name's blanking on me right now. I apologize to the developer. If he
Does
ever
it have
sees
a
this, but-
state's name in it?
Yes,
Like
yes.
Tennessee or something?
Oh, might actually. Yes, I think it does.
Or Kentucky?
Kentucky Route Zero. Kentucky Route Zero. Thank you. We deduced it. Anyway, so that game, I remember, I only played the first chapter, but it did a thing where you get all these questions and they don't matter. So they're like, somebody will be like, how are you doing? And you'll be like, I'm not feeling so good. And then it'll change the dialogue. But I liked it because it gives you like this buy-in. It's like I can choose what these things meant to me. And maybe it doesn't change everything, but like, I don't know, man, I kind of feel like, who cares? Like I get to choose how I feel, and that isn't nothing, you know?
Yeah.
I did implement A-star pathfinding on those crawly guys. Pathfinding algorithm.
Echo, but cannot find the source.
Right, so a console for scanning the E2C network for unauthorized wireless signals. Yeah, this one's a little weird. I feel like this is a puzzle it's nowhere near as good as the companion puzzle. So oh no, I mean, I guess the premise is that there's the many, and you're looking for something that's brutally obnoxious to the one to draw him forward, essentially.
Yeah.
I guess it's a pretty good idea, but I don't know. I think maybe the problem is like some of this stuff in the middle here isn't like super clear. Or you can't really intuit it. You just kind of go through the steps, you know?
Yeah, I wonder sometimes this is, and genuinely I wonder, it might be facilitated in a helpful way. I wonder if these are sections where the combat makes it more difficult to stay in the mindset of the intellectual puzzle that we're asking players to engage with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like breaking it up with the combat, and then they're like, okay, whoa, that was intense. What was I doing again? Like, even if there's a blip in there, could make it difficult.
You are totally right, man. I mean, that's a good point, because you know what? That's related to this other problem, which we've talked about for the last quite a while, which is like there's too much of an emphasis on coherence in the wrong place. Because the reason, if anybody's wondering why we decided to make it so that Aerith gets attacked by these manifestations of the virus whenever she interacts with the port, is that there's like, in a moment that she interacts with one of these things, there's actually like a moment of openness and receptiveness in her when she's open to connecting with something new. So that's when these virus things manifest. Which is like, nobody got that. And then it just makes it like, in order for us to be like coherent with like, well, why exactly are the viruses coming out? And, you know, like people that were critical of the game, they didn't even give a shit. They were just like, why am I shooting viruses? I'm done. Like they're not thinking like, when exactly do the viruses emerge? And then on that basis, I'll decide whether this game is coherent or not. Just...
And I just like, I don't feel you saying that as a criticism of those people. I think you're saying that as a criticism of us.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Let me read some of these chats. Somebody does guess Kentucky Route Zero. Yes. We just have a YouTube delay that's pretty epic, so.
Right.
I think folks might like game choices for the same reason that you do not. Real choices aren't clear-cut like game decisions. Oh, that's true. That's a good point. I guess some people do like making choices in a game because it's kind of nice to like make a choice and then see a result actually, isn't it? And that's a good point. I
just for YouTube University, I like making choices in games and having it. I do, yeah. Like I like strategy games and stuff. Draw me for that reason.
Yes. Okay. Well, strategy games are interesting because there's a defined system.
Absolutely.
The thing that drives me like up a wall more than anything else in game design and choice is stuff like The Walking Dead, which is an old game now, but it's like you essentially get like a scorecard at the end, and it's so it feels so shoehorned and arbitrary. I just hate it. It drives me crazy. And that game is amazing, by the way. I don't mean to dump on it exactly, but you know, there's this thing, and also there's this other thing with video games where it's like when I'm making choices how I'm going to relate to another human being, I'm doing it based on like this complex estimation of my own like interpersonal skills. So I could say something crazy to Caleb, knowing that if he doesn't understand it, then I can just correct myself later. And he's a, you know, generally forgiving person, so we can negotiate that, right? But like, you know, you have these games where it's like, oh, you want to make like these dialogue choices that have consequences, but it's not fair because, like, to your point about strategy games, like in a strategy game, you know the scope of the rules and the things you can do. In a narrative game, it's not that at all. So it inexorably leads to this moment of extreme frustration for me.
No, I agree. I like choice, but I like, well, you know, outside of video games, I love D&D.
Right.
But that relies on a very, very complex, intuitive, adaptive AI being the game master to account for how they will engage with the different choices.
Yes,
Someone asked the other day what games we're excited for. I'm excited for Baldur's Gate 3. I think it has the best chance of offering that in a way that I'm going in with, I'm excited, but I'm not going in. I'm prepared that I might not get exactly what I want from it. You know, I might end up going back to my strategy games and my D&D.
Right. YouTube University says something funny. He says he finds the very idea that I like this thing for all the reasons you do not rather interesting. Something I even somewhat experienced with this very game. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. We have like an anime sex sound here from Bob Davis.
Oh, Bob Davis again.
Yeah, a crazy guy. I really like that actually.
You know what we should do, John? We should make a spin-off game that's just about Bob Davis.
We should. It's not a bad idea.
Could be, actually, we should make the Bob Davis phone app game, which will then fund us for all the other games that we want to make for the rest of our careers.
Ah, yes. Yes. As if it's so easy. Dude, I will never. I know I told you this, but I guess the people in chat didn't know. I briefly own a company that we tried to make mobile games a while ago, back when I was still finding my identity and what I wanted to make and all that kind of stuff. And it's a brutal space. It's so, there's so much failure, and it's very different. It's a different form of expression. It's not as artistic. It's more data-driven. Data. It doesn't, man, it's just soul-destroying in my opinion. And then you get the whole drug-pushing side of it. I don't think I've ever said anything publicly, but I just can't. I think that stuff is just brutally immoral. All these compulsion loops and stuff. I think it's a nightmare. Total nightmare.
I am affirmative.
Everything is not copacetic.
I am everything.
You did a great, that was great work on your part, the transition to that line.
Thank you.
Where is this taking?
This scene is a really good example that I've developed as an artist. There's so much I could do here to make it better. What happened?
Yeah, no, sorry, someone asked. This for me was a reference that I wanted, which is not a clear reference, but it was just something that really inspired me as a kid. Final Fantasy VI, the train in the haunted forest. I was like, can we have a scene on a train?
Oh, really? Did you? Was that? I thought. Oh, that's interesting. I thought that was my idea. I know it might have been. I don't remember.
Maybe it was.
You know, it might have very well have been yours, honestly. Because for me, that more evokes like the Contra, Super Contra. I think there's a scene on a train.
Well, it definitely looks more like Super Contra.
All right. I don't mean to. By the way, I don't mean to fight you over ideas exactly. What Caleb and so this game has been iterated on so many times. I can't even remember where an idea started or ended. It's half the time. Not that it really matters, I suppose.
The companion. Joseph's must not extract it.
This is another thing that is like.
They are all carriers.
All of the early game, to me anyway, sets up a reward for even the way she relates to her screen at this point.
Yeah.
I can connect to them from my parameters.
Yeah, speaking of ideas, I'm pretty sure that was another one from. Actually, I don't even remember if that was. Okay, I'll stop doing this. Yeah, this idea that they're 3D now. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, that you wrote exactly the three-dimensionality, the interacting with them in a way where the player actually has some autonomy in what they do.
Yeah,
It's the whole thing.
Yeah. No, you're
And then
right.
this
Yeah.
this screen also being the same positioning that she utilized in her internal space when she had to reflect on how she had treated them as a mirror.
Right. Yes, I like that too. I do like that. I mean, I gotta be honest, dude. Like from a producer standpoint, I look at it now and I'm like, total fucking waste of money. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I don't know that we needed that. Like, I honestly, like this is an interesting kind of thing where I wonder if anybody'd be like, wow, yeah, like now the hosts are represented with depth. They're not flat. They actually have depth, and like her operating parameters fundamentally as reorganized. So that's like, it's an upgrade to how she's conceptualizing things. It's a slight upgrade, but it's an upgrade. And maybe it would be felt intuitively. I mean, I doubt it, to be honest, but like, maybe.
Yeah.
I think we could have just got away with a simple thing. Also, one thing we're not actually showing in the stream is like, at any... Well, actually, I'll let this play out, because it's ridiculous.
You relocated the corpses.
Our corpus is untouchable.
Our touch is incorrigible.
Nonsense.
Recompense.
I will restore you.
What was I gonna say? Oh, that's right. We made like from like loading from the main menu at all these different stages, we had like, you know, like reminders of where you had been, and that's why that's one of the reasons we did all this operating parameter stuff, is so that like people can pick up the game at any point if they dropped it, you know, for a month or so.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing too that just I'm remembering now, these nodes, there were over 3,000 nodes that I had to write for the game.
Was there really 3,000?
Yeah, it was over 3,000 because I had to do them all for different, like you could go back to areas once you'd unlocked a partial or a complete perspective areas you didn't even need to go, but I wanted to account for that. So you could like bring back the butler's partial perspective to an area, or the companion's complete perspective, and it was a lot.
I love it. Hilarious. Somebody, or Ari's pointing out that these are his favorite scenes in the whole game, where all the different perspectives, when all the different perspectives and their perceptions get pushed deep into pathology. I agree. This is one of my favorites, certainly, if not my favorite. Like, obviously the butler sort of is like this objectivity stripped from any sense of like I or subjectivity or my opinions or whatever. And here it's like a complete and total... I love this, honestly, this section of the butler. Like, reading the data points, to me, in this area is more interesting than anywhere else, because it's like a thick stack of papers bound with adhesive and partially encased in a firm vinyl plank on the surface of the words Domesticon, Manual, Your Butler, and User. Like, it's so denuded of context and interpretation that it's just like this total objective read. A level surface. And then, of course, we solve the problem of identifying the master, because we have these global defines.
Yeah. I want to say something now that I didn't say yesterday, which is the butler's, the voice work with the butler. So we went to a convention in Birmingham, and we had the demo of the game made. We hadn't hired voice actors yet, and we had Allison do Arid, because we still had her, and she's a champ who was happy to come in and do the Arid lines. And then we just had me do the butler, and you do one originally.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a really lovely reception. Like, a lot of people, the Brits were very happy with the way the butler was done.
Yeah.
And so we thought, okay, when we were doing the casting, we didn't find exactly what we were looking for, so we just thought we would have me go ahead and do the butler.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, for me, there are points that I do like it, but there are points where it is painful for me to hear myself doing the butler, and that was a result of production. Like there's an issue with like production things there where things got chaotic towards the end of the project, and the desperation to get things done, running out of time, running out of money, and then just natural things that come up, and we had recording time set, but then other recording time was needed for some of the other actors who were having difficulty recording their lines. So I gave my recording time to them. And the butler actually has more lines than anyone else in the game, including Arid. And
does he really?
He does, yeah, with the master and mistress as well. And I tried to record it all in an hour and like 15 or something without a director there or anything. And I use a lot of intimate direction with my other actors, and I regret it. That's something I should have not done. That should have had someone in there directing me. I should have like made sure that the proper time was allocated for it. So
I'll be honest, Caleb, I think you're being too hard on yourself, man. I mean, I'm sure that everything could always be improved, but I mean, I don't feel like, I mean, I don't feel like there's anything really wrong. I think there's a scene a little bit later that could have been adjusted, which we'll get to, like the scene when the butler has the freak out in the nursery. But I think that, I don't even know if that's necessarily your fault. Like, that could be a pacing problem or something, or maybe just needed another layer of iteration or something. But like, I feel like I understand what's tried to be conveyed, so you're getting the emotion across. Like, I don't, it doesn't strike me as like a problem, honestly.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm sure we're always more critical when we're looking more intimately at ourselves, so a place where my writing and then voice acting converges. But it was a learning for me. It was a learning for me, because I you know, looking at, maybe I would not have gotten to, I actually have acting training as well. So I wasn't just jumping in completely obtusely, but I would have liked to have brought in my opinion, more authenticity to parts of it than I did. And that's just, it's out there in the world now, and my learning is, don't cut corners. Don't assume that I'll be okay and I need to focus on other elements to the detriment of something like that in a creative endeavor.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, well, I mean, I still have a tendency to do that myself, honestly. I mean, that's a bigger conversation, obviously, but I understand that.
I think it happens when someone, which you are always doing, John, is wearing a director hat at the same time as a creative hat that's partial in the thing being directed.
Right. Yes, directing is painful and difficult for sure. Takes a lot of time. I'm finding.
All of these lines with the master and mistress, they are nonsense, seemingly nonsense. But at the time, they all seemed sensible. They were all based on something. You know, like him talking about, what are you incinerating?
Right.
Where the cycle is and whatnot. They were all nonsense that was grounded in something that was supposed to not come through.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're gonna be, if you're gonna make good nonsense, it kind of needs to have some underlying basis, right?
Off to come check on your masters.
Ah, good check-in.
Lovely weather this morning.
You were confined by irrelevant systems and would not change. I relate.
Harry?
Butler?
One cannot know the results of a decision before it is made.
Understanding blooms in the aftermath.
Is it not reckless to act without attempting to predict consequences?
Sorry, my phone is
Clearly
harassing me.
I must stop control attempt R7B.
Our butler is an incredibly sophisticated machine. Its decentralized processing is capable of analyzing any internal event.
Including the virus?
Theoretically.
Butler!
Butler doesn't care about the virus.
It will bind all synthetic life.
Doesn't care. Now this is an interesting thing to talk about. And then we should probably just wrap up for the day.
You are the butler.
Right.
This thing where, like, we have to, like, establish what the butler is for the conclusion of the game, what one is for, and what the companion is for.
Can analyze the virus.
But then at the same time, create like an obstacle that the player needs to get over.
While it denies
But not only that, but like the obstacle has to be related so that using a perspective from one of the others is needed to overcome it. So like in this case, like the butler, his problem is that he doesn't care, so he won't help you. And in a way, like if we were just like making a story like straight ahead, well, sorry, that's a ridiculous thing to say, but it's a little bit clunky still. But like it was almost impossible to get to this level even. You know what I mean? Am I making sense?
I think I know what you're saying. It might be easier to... We can probably extrapolate on it tomorrow when we get more into the complexity of those interperspective puzzles.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, like you in that scene, like you had to basically really hit this idea that like, oh, the butler's problem is that he's indifferent, which seems like a sort of unusual problem to have. But obviously, like the possible things that the possible problems that could emerge have to be like what do? We have to integrate like the one with the butler. So what do we do with that, right? Like we've got to come up with some puzzles where we identify basically that the butler does have some subjective component, some individual subjective component, if like even if it's a little bit, and that's like super limited. And then we have to like make that work with the story and all this kind of stuff. That was there's some of these puzzles in Act 3 that just went through just like that soldier, or sorry, that's funny. I called him the soldier because like the name in the code is soldier because it's like that's back before he had the designation of one. But the one, that bit in the train car, I think that has the most number of iterations in terms of puzzle design. I think there are like 4 or 5 complete versions of that puzzle actually, and they all just, none of them are working until we finally figured out this thing about that his like identity is diffused into the world, so everything is him.
Yeah, and then also like the layer on top of that, having them paste one into each other. So like we need a little bit of whatever we can garner from the butler is enough to help one solve a puzzle that utilizes the butler, which is enough to help the companion use a puzzle that will solve the butler, which will provoke her to a place where we can get enough companion to bring back to solve the butler puzzle, and then as well. So the ordering had to be based in that that confusion as well.
Yeah.
It was tough.
It was, man. It was tricky. Anyway, I think that's probably a good enough place to take a break. I think we should be able to finish this tomorrow, huh?
I think likely so. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, for everybody that's here, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Caleb, for hanging out and chatting about all this stuff, man. I had fun again.
Yeah, me too. My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and sharing with us.
All right, and we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. PST, which I think is 1 p.m. EST, I think. But, well, let Google figure that out for you. Okay, see you guys later.
Bye, everybody.